Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive Perspective. I have Ambassador Babikir Elamin, head of the mission at the Embassy of the Republic of Sudan here in London. And we're going to talk straightforwardly about the genocide in Sudan. Well, I think it's a genocide. The Americans even declared it a genocide back in 2023, which is a shocker in itself. But Ambassador, welcome to the show. It's a ghastly situation. The pictures I've seen, the videos, I mean, they're in some cases seem even worse than what we're seeing in Gaza. The way that the RSF in particular seem to have gone about their killing on this occasion is truly barbaric. What's going on there?
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. And let me also express my deep condolences and sympathy to the families of the victims in Al-Fashir, in Bara, and elsewhere. And you rightly said, rightly saying that what is going there is very brutal, very horrifying, very tragic. And actually, what happened and is still happening in Al-Fashir is not the first time that of its kind, because you mentioned that the genocide happened in 2023 back in Al-Guinea, West Darfur. There was a outright genocide targeting a specific community. Between 5,000 to 7,000 civilians have been slaughtered, sometimes buried alive, sometimes even forced to dig their own graves to be buried there while they were still alive. Males as young as 2 years old were also killed, and with very obvious intention to commit genocide, because they are targeting people because of their ethnicity, because of their how they do look, or because of their the way they are, just because they are different from them, because they espousing this racial supremacy, racial extremism, racial terrorism. Actually,
I saw the video at the embassy during the press conference, and the video particularly of the hospital in Fasher, which was taken over by these so-called rebels. I mean, I guess you'd probably describe them as terrorists, but they literally were going around shooting patients as they were completely surrendered and submitted. There was no danger, nothing, but they seemed to take sort of callous pleasure in actually shooting women and men who were clearly injured, or patients lying on the floor in a kind of rudimentary hospital there as well. Is that indicative of what's been going on in Fasher?
Of course, and as I said earlier, it is not the first time, and it wasn't the last time as well, because before Al-Fashir, the Saudi maternity hospital in Al-Fashir, which was stormed by the terrorist RSF, and they opened fire randomly and without any warning against they opened fire on patients and the companion and the medical staff as well. But before that, they have been shelling this hospital in particular and all other hospitals in the city. The city had a large number of hospitals because it used to be a home for 2 million people. So there was a number of hospitals functioning there, even though the city was under siege for the last 18 months. But the militia kept shelling this hospital all the time, on daily basis. And as a result, all these hospitals destroyed and went out of service. With the exception of this Saudi maternity hospital, which was functioning partially, actually. So they want to make sure that nobody escaped. Even the patients, even the people who are injured or patients, women and children, were killed, around 500. And they have done that also earlier the same week in Bara. Bara is a town in Kordofan nearby. And they also target a hospital. They killed like 12 of the medical staff. They took some of the patients as captives. And they have done it again maybe a few days ago, last week, in also a small town called Kurnoi in North Darfur. They also targeted a hospital, and they killed 6 children or 7 children. In the same time also they send a drone to a funeral. People who are mourning their dead in North Kordofan. They send a drone and they killed 40 people who were attending the funeral.
Well, this is really interesting because drones, really sophisticated weapons, automatic, latest sort of weaponry, the notion of 100,000 plus, maybe 200,000 fighters. I mean, this can't happen without money. It can't happen with some sort of financial support. From what I've researched, the RSF were initially used by the former dictator Omar al-Bashir, who was overthrown with the military coup at that time, or the public efforts to disrupt it. That's what I understand.
Revolution, yeah.
The revolution, essentially. And from that, it seems the RSF were used by Omar al-Bashir in Darfur before, in the early 2000s, to actually wipe out many, many people on that side. There seems to be a genocide. So this is habitual. They seem to have this kind of habit of doing it. And then it seems that though they had some share in the new emerging military stroke civilian council, which was going to then initiate a democratic set of elections, but that's never happened. Why? Is it entirely due to the RSF, or is there another problem as well? You can say.
Okay. Firstly, let me explain that the RSF actually is the Janjaweed. The Janjaweed now is well known worldwide, and they have been in existence for quite some time, maybe for decades, and basically representing some of the nomadic communities in Darfur and beyond. They have their extension in the Sahel, the African Sahel countries. And for them, being nomadic in such extended area that sometimes not governed probably under very strong governments because they're crisscrossing the region.
Sure.
So they used to be armed, and they used to, for them, fighting is a lifestyle. Yes, during under the previous regime, because there has been this armed struggle movement in Darfur, fighting the ousted regime. So that regime used the Janjaweed as a counter-insurgent. I mean, right. To counter this armed struggle movement. And as there was a traditional, rivalry between the two communities. The armed struggle movement largely representing African communities who are basically farmers, while these are nomadic. So they are like a sort of rivalries or enemies in some cases. The former regime used that to fight against this armed struggle movement, and because for the national army, the Sudanese armed forces, it is not easy to fight against. It wasn't easy to fight against that armed struggle movement, and because this they are representing specific communities, and the Sudanese armed forces being the national army, representing the makeup of the entire population. And so the former regime thought that it was easier to fight, to use the Janjaweed.
Against them.
And along with time, the RSF became as part of the military.
Sudanese army, they became officially.
And they tried to actually to regulate them and to legitimize them. But nevertheless, they are still being seen as one of the tools the former regime used to stay in power.
Right.
So upon revolution, after the popular protest against the former regime, there have been a great fear that the RSF will be used to suppress and to the revolution, the uprising, and there will be a lot of bloodshed. So, but the leadership of the RSF, Hemedti, then decided not to continue protecting or to continue siding with the ousted regime, and he pretended that he is siding with the revolution, and as such has been accommodated in the Transitional Military Council at the beginning, and secondly at the Transitional Sovereignty Council, with the view to integrate the RSF and to make it like a part of the national army, and to integrate it fully, and to tame actually, and to reform those who were members of the RSF, to do away with this kind of formation, because the existence of many armed forces in one country is always a pathway for conflicts, for war, and
well, it does seem like under Omar al-Bashir, he handed Hemedti, Dagalo, he handed him a lot of wealth, gold mines, access to a lot of other financial resources, a lot of which is said to be where the finance and the money comes from for the RSF military power, that they actually then started buying weapons from the likes of the United Arab Emirates in particular. They are very implicated in the RSF in terms of supporting the RSF actions.
Yes, RSF under Omar al-Bashir, yes, had an access to some of the gold mines in Darfur, and but their number was not that big. After revolution, because you'd ask me after the revolution, because there was a lot of external meddling, external intervention. And some power, not even many international actors see RSF is an easy military force that can be used to further their agenda. And as from there, the RSF, actually even before the removal of Omar al-Bashir regime, the RSF began to have its network of external relations, and to be used in other parts of not outside Sudan, and that constituted a source of foreign income for them. And they had also the relations with the EU. The EU at a certain time used them also to help curb the irregular migration or illegal migration and human trafficking. And they have also paid them, and they cultivated special relation with its leadership. So that is among the reasons that made the RSF to be emboldened and empowered, and to grow this interest on controlling the entire Sudan.
So this isn't really strictly a civil war which is caused by, say, the Sudanese government or the people. There are outside players. You're saying there are outside players. I heard around 17 nations may be involved in this process. The UAE comes out as the top one, the front man in the operation. But Great Britain is supplying arms to the UAE. So some of the some of the arms which are coming into the RSF would seem to implicate Europe and Britain and perhaps even America. And yet America is kind of makes good noises about Sudanese government. They claim to be on your side in a way, don't they?
Let me put it that way. Actually, the UK government officially denied that any weapons used by no British weapon are used by the RSF. There were reports of that some parts of the vehicles manufactured in the UAE benefited from British technology or British some part manufactured here. But officially, they said no such arms British arms used by the RSF. For the UAE, yes, it is now become everybody in the world following up this in the international arena knows that UAE is the main sponsor of the RSF, and for many observers, they see RSF is just a proxy of the UAE. And for many of them, that it is the main enabler of what the RSF has been doing to Sudanese people for the last 2.5 years. What happened in Al-Fashir, as I said earlier, is not the first. It wasn't the first one. There was a similar genocide in El Geneina in June 2023. There was a series of massacres in Al Jazeera and Sinnar and Blue Nile states, Central Sudan. And other, I'm talking now, they are still besieging cities in South Kordofan, Al-Kadugli, Dalanj, and they are shelling some cities like Al-Ubayd, and they are open about that. They will be targeting other part of the country, and even they are using the strategic drone. You earlier mentioned that they are using very sophisticated weapons, strategic drones that can fly for nearly 1,000 kilometers or miles, and carrying heavy what you call bombs, and they can target specific object with a high degree of precisely. I mean, and now they are targeting even safe cities.
Well, that's
in North Sudan.
That's even more concerning, Ambassador, because there's indications I've had that it's Ukrainian trainers that have been training these RSF. And when I start adding up the United Arab Emirates, which is a very strong alliance, let's face it, with most of the Atlantic powers, they are essentially a puppet regime in many people's eyes of the West. So it's highly inconceivable that the UAE would be arming the RSF without the knowledge of many of the intelligence services of the Western powers. So is it that they're turning a blind eye and they're sort of putting the UAE as the front man because they don't want to spoil relations with you as a government, and perhaps they still want this problem to be created for you in Sudan in order to achieve something? And I'm thinking about what that something is. What possible benefit is there for UAE in putting Sudan into this situation? I can think of a few, but I'll let you fire a few of your thoughts on what are the interests of the United Arab Emirates in supporting the RSF?
I would like to explain that this war started by the RSF initiated carrying out a military coup to remove the current government or the president of the Sovereignty Council, the commander-in-chief of the Sudanese Armed Forces, and that the RSF will control the entire country, and they will do away with the current command of the Sudanese Armed Forces, and they handpick people from their own to be in power. And apparently that was supported by certain regional and international power. At least they are agreeing to that. They were agreeing to that.
Wow.
But that attempted coup failed in a very bad way. I mean, because of the Sudanese armed forces, the guard of the president of the sovereign council were very courageous and brave, and they put a lot of resistance and sacrificing their lives to protect, and they foiled the coup.
That was in Khartoum. They tried to take over.
Yes, that's on the 15th of April. Having this coup failed, now they turn to what it seemed to be like plan B. And that when things went wrong for the many international actors. They didn't want that. They wouldn't imagine that things will turn out that way. They saw that it will be just fast
takeover. That the coup would be successful.
And that they will. These people will talk about resuming democratic transition, but things went wrong in a very bad way for them. And they felt that they being like trapped. They couldn't, come straight away to condemn that things. So they began spreading this false narrative. The false narrative that there is a power struggle between two generals, or there is this civil war. They were using all this kind of, false.
That's what I'm seeing on Al Jazeera. I'm seeing it on a lot of the Western press.
Yes,
they're painting it as a civil war.
Civil war. Sometimes they said just two generals. They have conflict, or power conflict. And all of these are false narratives.
So what is it about the Sudanese establishment, the civilian military partnership that seems to be there currently, and the possibility of a democratic, election in the future? What troubles these 17 nations that seem to be conspiring along with the RSF as their puppet? What is it about you or your establishment that they don't like? What do they want from you?
When we talk about mercenaries from 17 countries, not necessarily with the approval and support of their government.
I see.
We know for sure many countries are not supporting what is going on or what the plan of the RSF. But when you have money, you can recruit people, sometimes under the guise of working for what you call security companies. For example, significant number of mercenaries came from Colombia in South America.
Well,
and these are the the technical people, that the people who can run these sophisticated weapons, who can do the training, because we know that the Janjaweed are almost illiterate. Most of them are illiterate. They don't know to deal with this high-tech weapons. So they brought the people from Colombia. But for sure, the Colombian government, the Colombian president, the Colombian minister,
they don't support
against this. And they came out publicly condemning this and condemning this activity. And they said, they explained that these people have been misled, at least some of them actually, have been misled by UAE-based companies.
They've been recruiting them in UAE. This is what I've researched.
So the point I'm trying to make that not all the 17 countries are.
They're not directly involved, but there are mercenaries or agencies or organizations.
Some of them are part of that, but not. We can't say 17 countries are conspiring against Sudan.
Okay, so let's just take UAE then. Let's take them as the prime mover in this. They have no real business in Africa, but what I know for sure and have known for quite some time is that they have been actively buying up ports along the East African coast, Somalia, Ethiopia. I'm not sure whether Eritrea is involved, but they've been Socotra Island, for instance, was another one off the Yemen, the Aden port. They've been actively acting as a maritime power, building up this kind of maritime power across that region. Now, I have to also now bring in another factor, because that Bab el-Mandeb Strait, where Yemen has been having a lot of course, influence in terms of what ships go in and don't go in, based on the conflict in Palestine. And Israeli, American, British, other ships have been hit. It's been a very ongoing battle. So that strait, part of what's going on in that Red Sea or in that strait is, of course, Sudan. You're part and parcel of that. Strategically, you're very much in a place where Israel, the Americans, or all of these powers would be quite keen on keeping, I guess, Sudan under some kind of control, because you don't want Sudan coming involved on the same level, not that it is, but it would seem to me that Israel also has an interest, and Israel and UAE are literally tied to the hip. You know, the Mossad, the agencies of Israel. It's not a secret. It's an open, reality that the UAE is openly supporting the Israeli efforts. They're quite happy with normalization in that sense, and they aren't very supportive of the Palestinian cause. And they also allowed Israeli goods and trade to start coming through their ports in the Hormuz when the Yemenis cut off the supply line to Eilat. So is Sudan being dragged into the Gulf War, if you like, the situation in Palestine and Israel? Are you being dragged into that?
I don't think that might be the case. Right? Yes, you are right that UAE has, for me, unexplained interest in quite a large number of ports on the Red Sea. Mm. But as far as we are concerned, we are open for cooperation on building new ports in very normal way, in win-win deals.
Yeah, business deals.
Yeah, like business. I mean, like any joint venture, any joint investment. We are ready for development, and also we support free navigation, free trade on the Red Sea. We have like 700 kilometer coastal line on the Red Sea. We are ready to cooperate with all members of the international communities and with all members of the international, with the world, because we believe in trade, peaceful exchange, we believe in, we don't want to get in, we are not against any specific countries when it comes to use of the Red Sea. The Red Sea is international water, of course, used for all, and in accordance with the international law and with the international tradition, international norms. So I don't think, and also there is one point that Sudan is a large country in terms of area, land size, and is neighboring 7 countries, surrounded by 7 countries, and is linking the Middle East to Africa, linking East Africa to Central and Western Africa. So geopolitically speaking, Sudan is a very important country. Any instability in the country will affect the international and regional security. So it is the interest of all countries, all members of the international community, to support the government of Sudan, to support the Sudanese armed forces, to maintain and to re-establish security and stability.
Well, at the moment, the only ones who've openly said they're supporting you are the Egyptians. So your Egyptian neighbors are supporting you practically. Are there any others who are supporting the Sudanese government openly?
Let me put it that way. For that, so we just want the international community to treat RSF, the terrorist RSF, the same way they treated ISIS.
Mm-hmm. You see them on the same level?
Even for right now, as we are, because now ISIS largely has been contained. Right now, RSF is more dangerous than ISIS. And
they're richer.
They are richer. They have access to you earlier mentioned, they have access to very sophisticated weapon and strategic drones, high-tech heavy artillery, high-tech jamming system, and they have this uninterrupted flow or supply of mercenaries. The other day I cited an article in the New York Times last September from last year, citing or quoting an internal memo of the EU estimating that by February 2024 there were 200,000 foreign mercenaries fighting alongside the militia, alongside this terrorist militia. So this is very dangerous phenomenon. This is very serious challenge for the international security, for the regional security, and taking into account that the kind of Africa is abound by many similar armed groups.
Boko Haram,
Qaeda in what you call Maghrib, Qaeda.
The Al-Shabaab, I think, down.
What we call Seleka in Central Africa, and the likes. So if this kind of paramilitary militia, this terrorists, would have access to this kind of very sophisticated and advanced weaponry, so the entire continent, the statehood, the state of the African state is under great threat.
Well, just continuing the theme before I conclude with what you've raised now, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail, but one of the fears was also that the arms supplies could, now that the Syrian access point for the axis of resistance had been cut off, because, of course, with Julani, Ahmad Shara, whatever you want to call him, since his rise and the connection with the West, there's no longer that direct access to Palestinian resistance and to the Lebanese resistance against Israel. So the argument was that actually Sudan might become one of the sources for weapons supply to the Palestinian resistance. Of course, Egypt comes before Sudan, but there seemed to be this implication that perhaps that's also another reason why the likes of Israel and some of these other countries would be worried about Sudan, to say that actually they might become a conduit for weapons going to Gaza.
Look, Sudan is now going through, before this war, we were going through very difficult transition. After 30 years of dictatorship and multiple conflicts, internal conflicts, and multiple, we need a period of stability, of living in peace within ourselves and within our surrounding, with the surrounding environment. We had enough of this armed conflict, and we didn't want to be part of any conflict. And because we have paid a lot of cost of international isolation, international sanction, internal conflict, dictatorship. So for our people, we need we want to focus on our own issues. And
but the problem Ambassador, the problem is, you might want to do that, but the track record says that most of these Western powers, particularly, when you have oil, when you have gold, when you have the kind of resources, rich resources which Sudan has, it goes back to what happened in Libya. It goes back to perhaps what's happened in Syria, perhaps what might happen in Pakistan or Iran. Balkanization. There's a tactic for whenever there's a strong nation which wants independence and sovereignty and to live peacefully and to utilize its resources for its own people, what you find is the Americans and a lot of the Western Empire loves creating balkanization. Do you think you're a victim of that?
Because we live in in a world that is not governed by any moralities and overarching, law, because this even international law just cited by some people when in a position, used by the strong nation to justify their own, sometimes their own action or their own interest. So for us, when people united, when have a sense of purpose, when the political elite being very aware and of the reality of their situation, the reality of the international order we are in now, there is a chance to let the international actors to deal with you the way they want to be dealt with. But when there are differences, when there are people who are ready to sell off and to...
So the RSF could be used as a tool for balkanization, is what I'm driving at. They're an ideal
force. Sudanese people learn the lessons.
Egypt...
They are now very much united behind the Sudanese armed forces, behind the government, and they want to get rid of this danger, the threat of the RSF. And after that, to come together to chart a new pathway for them. So
Egypt is being disrupted. On the north, it's got the Gazan problem. It's got Israel to face. Israel has a claim on the Sinai. They say Greater Israel is part of it. Is Egypt? There's even saying that Sudan, parts of the Sudanese territory, are also part of that plan. Leave that aside. But I'm just wondering whether Egypt now being engaged on the south with trouble in Sudan, it means that Egypt cannot really focus on the north on its own. It gives it even more problems. I can also see that the Americans with Blinken, who clearly condemned this genocide the last time it happened, they said they would do all sorts of sanctions on this Dagalo character and the RSF. In practical terms, if they wanted to, they could pretty much shut down this movement by just making a call to the UAE and saying, stop supplying arms. And who would the UAE be to resist the Americans? Because the UAE themselves rely on America for their very defense in the potential Gulf War. So it doesn't seem logical to me that the Americans claim to be on your side, the government side, and at the same time, they're not really doing anything to stop those arms coming to the RSF. So in a sense, they're undermining you.
Of course, it is the duty of the international community not to stop the arm only and stop the flow of influx of mercenaries, but to take decisive measures to make the enabler, to give directives to the leadership of the so-called RSF, the terrorist actors, to stop it. I can refer you to the study by Chatham House some time ago, a few months ago, on the gold on Sudan and how it was used by the militia. They mentioned that UAE has influence on the decision making within this terrorist RSF. So they are well placed, even not passively to stop the flow of the work, but proactively to direct them to stop. Enough is enough.
That's your demand. If they don't do this, and if the arms keep coming to RSF, is there a chance that the establishment, the main Sudanese government, can be overthrown? Are you under threat for being overthrown?
No, because the Sudanese, it is not a matter of government. Or it is the issue of the Sudanese people. If you study the history of Sudan, you will find very striking feature that the Sudanese people always put a lot of whatever attempt to invade the country, whatever the attempt to impose something on them, to impose even a new religion or new idea, they will resist and they wouldn't. That's the history.
The resistance has always been part of the culture.
Yes, but part of the DNA of the Sudanese people. And in the early, for example, during the pre-history, the early history of old Egyptian civilization, when Egypt was invaded by Romans, and by Persians and these invaders try to extend to Sudan or to annex Sudan. The Sudanese people put out a lot of pressure, even during Islamic, what we call the Arab conquest.
Yes,
yeah. The Sudanese fought against that, and Islam wasn't introduced by conquest. It was introduced peacefully through traders, through ulama. But when there was a fight, they put a lot of, they prevented it. They prevail on that. So the Sudanese people cannot be ruled by power, by force, and by even external actors. And now they are seeing what is happening is the external aggression. So it is the talk about the possibility of removal or overthrowing the government. It's not in place.
So what's your call to the international community? How can they help you now in this situation? How can they help those people being killed in those regions where the RSF is dominating?
Now what is happening? The world began to pay closer attention on what is going there in Sudan and what is the RSF doing and what do they represent, and they are fully aware of the Janjaweed, the history of Janjaweed, their behavior, the crimes that they have been committing for maybe more than 20 years, and this is a chance. Now, if they don't want to stop with the Sudanese people and to translate this outrage, this outcry worldwide, it must be translated into concrete action. For us, the concrete action can include that, first of all, put pressure on the enablers of this ongoing atrocities to stop it, because they are in a position to stop it if they wanted. Secondly, to side with the Sudanese government, the Sudanese armed forces, because these are the only institutions that can re-establish stability and peace and security in Sudan, and to contain whatever spillover of the war in Sudan. And thirdly, to fight against impunity, because what is happening now is, in a way, is an outcome of the impunity that the Janjaweed have enjoyed for some time, for quite time, because when what you call UNAMID, the United Nations African Mission in Darfur, was deployed in Darfur 15 or 16 years ago. What they have done is only just to maintain the status quo, and they didn't pursue issues of accountability. And now it is time for this, because impunity is always encouraging committing further atrocities.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you very much for an enlightening insight into what's going on in Sudan. Many people don't know anything really about the internal workings, but certainly you clarified many issues. And all I can really comment on is, again, the failure of the international community, the failure for the United Nations to be able to act in advance, the failure of the great powers to act in advance in nations like Sudan, where clearly there's the potential for such violence, which is going to affect civilians in a way where it's intolerable from a humane point of view. This needs to be addressed. If the United Nations is ineffective, if the great powers of, say, Russia, China, America, if they can't get their acts together to preempt the kind of problems that exist, and indeed if many of them actually act as silent players in the background with the likes of the UAE in this case, I can't see why the United States and the British, who have very powerful hold and control over the UAE, why they can't just turn the tap off, make sure no weapons are getting to the UAE, or just give them a ring to say, no, stop it. And that would save lives. if they don't do this, then there's clearly some question to be asked as to why they're not doing it. And of course, the culpability of anybody who is not trying to stop this is that they're seeing thousands and thousands of innocent civilians yet again being killed, just like in Gaza. I think the pressure perhaps has to be put on all of these establishments that they must act on a moral, ethical basis. And wherever there is this kind of clear-cut genocidal intent, there has to be action to stop it. Otherwise, all our hands are bloodied by this kind of reality. Thank you for watching this edition of the Deep Dive Perspective. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And indeed, give us your comments. Let us know what you think. What did you think of what the ambassador said today? Do you agree with it? Are there other solutions that you can prefer? Please do comment. And thank you, Your Excellency, for coming in. And once again, we thank you for giving us the insights. Until the next Deep Dive Perspective, goodbye.